Welcome to Portals of Perception, and today we are announcing the launch of Portals into the Soul, a new writing and audio-video project we will be developing and publishing through 2024. So along with publishing the written and the recorded installments, we also imagine a discovery journey in pods, open to really anyone who would care to join with others to co-create your own experience, your own discovery journey as you follow the work and the content that's being developed and being released, and in such a way that will provide you an opportunity to bring to it your insights and your discoveries. I'm here with Peter, Kyriaki, and Patrick from the Portals team who are involved in the project. You have each had a chance to read through the Preamble and Chapter 1 and offer comments and suggestions. So, anything you'd like to offer by way of first impression and intuition?
Yeah, I'd like to say that this content is really unique, original, and revelatory. And I always wondered, what is the soul? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Do we live inside it, or does it live inside us? And if it has a voice, how to listen to this voice and how to connect with this voice. And also, if we are disconnected from our soul, how does that impact our well-being, our health, our fulfillment? So I think all these questions about the soul are really very important questions that at least once in our life we are faced with these questions. And I can imagine circles of people, pods, teams, either one-on-one or smaller teams of 10 people exploring these questions. And from what I've seen, what you offer, Aviv, in these recordings and in these writings, it's really a completely new approach. It's a completely new approach from what we know or what we think we know. And I'm personally very, very inspired, and I think it can help people in whether they want, simply to find their purpose, to tune with their soul, to have well-being, or whether they are in a spiritual and developmental journey. I think this content, it's really practical, accessible, and very special. So I think it's a gift, and it's worthwhile to explore it with friends or with people who are interested.
All right, you promised there a lot, so we're going to have to work to deliver on that.
Yeah, I would say that one of the exciting aspects of the work that I've seen so far is if we think of ourselves as spiritual beings first, rather than planetary beings, the idea that the soul is this kind of local guide for us. And in so many of the Portals conversations, whether it's current openings or all of the dialogues about human development, human possibility, we see that the natural laws and the physical systems are all supporting us. They have a mission, whether we understand what that mission is or not, and they have a mission in helping us fulfill our lives. So I think the soul is a critical piece of that. It's kind of like I said, a local guide for how we manage a human life here on this planet. And it is a kind of relationship. I'm starting to see it as that. We have a relationship with our soul, and do we ignore it? Do we listen to it? Do we let it guide us? Do we let it help us help ourselves? So, yeah, I think that's a great territory for working into in these times.
Thank you. I think that for a lot of people, especially in the West, if you were raised in any kind of a religion, I had a very religious upbringing, you always heard about the soul. But it was this sort of mysterious point of theology. We have this immortal soul. It was never more than that, never went beyond that, other than it's something that is there. And in the end, it's part of your religious experience. You either kind of feel has meaning or doesn't. And I know for me growing up, it's just soul was just one of those points of theology that had no practical effect on my life. And so what I find very appealing about this body of work is we're actually asking people to, whatever you think you know about the soul, just set that aside and think of the soul as a companion, as something that is in you, and it actually has a job to do. Every human being is given a soul. It's there for a reason, and it's really trying to help us. And if we think of it as a companion and begin to understand the many things that it's already doing for us and wants to do for us, I think we can have a much more sort of conscious, aware relationship with our soul, to where it's not just a point of theology that's way high someplace, but it's very practically in our life. And I know that part of this body of work as it unfolds is it's to make sure that it isn't just another sort of religious reference, but there are actually pathways to understand what the soul is and very practical ways to interact with it and communicate with it and begin to welcome the soul into your life as a companion, not as something so far away that, it has no meaning. So I look forward to this as it goes forward, just because it has such a different approach and understanding, and a very friendly, welcoming sort of approach to understanding the soul.
Yeah, I'm listening to everything that the three of you are describing, and I'd like to read this work myself. So the thing about it is that it's emerging as an unfolding, evolving body of work, body of revelation, some of which we touched extensively in the various portals conversations over the last few years, but it was always in chunks, in pieces, and something happened over Christmas Eve, because I've experienced, as the preamble will describe, I've experienced the September through to the end of the year to literally be like a couple of years in just these 2-3 months. Intensity, creativity, and also stress and pressure. And on Christmas Eve, I felt like for the first time in 3 or 4 months, I was able to relax. And I don't particularly celebrate Christmas Eve, but there is nevertheless a cosmology around Christmas Eve that has found me. And little did I know, because I certainly did not expect that I'd be writing a book at this time. It wasn't anything I was planning. Certainly not a book about the soul, but I discovered the project was instructing me, the Portals project was instructing me that I was about to write this body of work. And the curious thing about this is somebody can trace on Portals one of the earliest conversations we've had more than 3 years ago. We're actually describing this sense of leading from the unconscious. And at the time, we thought it was a radical idea to put out. What does it mean to lead from the unconscious? In many ways, the Portals project has been one step after another, a discovery of leading from the unconscious. So this now becomes a lot more important, and in a way, working into this body of work is a huge, big, for instance, about leading from the unconscious, because number one, as I said, I didn't know I was going to do this, and number two, what started to emerge on Christmas Eve was essentially that chapter 1 and some ideas about chapter 2, which were based on some notes and some work that we've done earlier, and all of a sudden it developed into something a lot bigger. So let me just pause here and see if there is anything specific about this that you want to say or ask me, or and there is more perhaps to describe about the significance of leading from the unconscious. Perhaps as you think about where you want to lead the conversation, I'd say the following, which is one of the reasons we said let's lead from the unconscious is because we want to surrender our need and desire to be in control. There's something about the endless need, the endless fascination, and especially in the last couple of centuries, in the way humanity developed, the degree to which we've been based in our egos and our agendas. We want to control everywhere we are. We want to control. So how do you control your life? Well, you make sure you move about in the area that you know. One way to lose or surrender control is to embark on something you don't know, and to deliberately engage with inquiries that will lead you into what is perhaps unknown. So there is a lot more to say about this, including how that might itself be an idea that will feature in the book here. But let me pause and see if any one of you want to lead the conversation in any way.
Yeah, what I hear in what you're saying is this element of trust, and that we have to trust ourselves, and that ties in with, what we've talked about in the post-guru quest, that it's not outside of us. It's what we're looking for is inside of us, and that means we have to trust ourselves over what we find in the world, or evaluate what we find in the world, but trust ourselves at the last, and go with that. So with that in mind, I'm curious about, we've had on Portals such a great journey with the post-guru quest, the 3 lives and the 3 journeys. Now we have the inner conclave. We've got Homo Universalis, about the evolution, the possible evolution and the direction. So when you talk about the leading from the unconscious, this soul element seems to have come in at a very opportune moment to bring, in my mind, to bring all these elements together. And I'm just wondering if you see it that way, and what that might mean. Is it a linchpin somehow?
Well, the short answer is we're about to discover, and that's actually part of the exercise. But to even pick it, the first thread you talk to when you describe about learning to trust us, inside us, you said it's inside us. Well, even that, Peter, may be reframed somewhat along this journey when we look to inquire in a whole new and deeper way, what do we mean us? And the inside, and maybe the person that you are is inside you, but also is beyond you and extending beyond that. So especially when you begin to think about the prospect of a universalis human. So let me try and thread a little bit of how the work is emerging so far, and listen to what I'm saying and discover as I do whether there is an answer to your question about how those different themes come together. As I approach this, I will say that we've always intuited that there was a sense of a teleology of the project being wiser than us, and wiser than me, wiser than us, and it is leading us. So some aspect of your inquiry can be answered today. Some will probably reveal itself along the journey. So what do we know about portals into the soul? We know the preamble is there, which is a bit of a story of how the work emerged. And it also describes the two problems that I had to confront in agreeing to do this work, and also the fact that I needed to address the temerity challenge. Where will I find the temerity and the chutzpah to embark on what? Writing a book about the soul? So the preamble addresses that. And then chapter 1 describes the soul and its three foundational characters as an orchestration of the human experience, and describes, as you alluded to, Peter, that sense of being spiritual, being inside a planetary human model, with the soul being a companion, a liaison, and describing its various multifaceted nature. So that is the spaces that chapter 1 is going to go into. And then chapter 2 goes into the territory of, what happens through life experience when we encounter what we are describing as a separation experience. The separation experience doesn't mean we get completely disconnected from our souls, because we can't, and at the same time we can find ourselves in life, in circumstances, having gone through various experiences where perhaps the conversational range and permission of being in tune and attuned to the soul is somewhat marginalized or reduced or compressed. So we're describing that, what will cause that, and then what will that cause in the soul. And this radical idea that the soul may develop a psychology about its experience inside you, the person that it comes to serve. And we're left at the end of chapter 2, at least that's the way I'm thinking about it right now, at a cliffhanger. So what do you do with that problem? And initially I thought that chapter 3 was going to embark on a certain soul inquiry process, which is actually the way it's being narrated in the Ghost and the Inner Conclave conversation with Jeff Vanderkloot. I thought that is where it was going to go. But the way of this wanted to evolve differently, which is why I'm saying that this project has its own mind and its own intelligence. These are big words that we will have to look to also integrate into the story. And what surprisingly developed was that from what appeared to have been an esoteric developmental inquiry about the soul, I'm now finding that it is resisting me solving the problem that we encountered in chapter 2. So something wants to resist that immediate resolution. And it's guiding me to try to describe and explore the interface between the soul and the brain. And even put that inside a historic context of the last century and a half, and what would be the significance of this, and why this is the moment of the brain, third decade of the 21st century. And part of why I'm sensing it's doing that is this idea of not leading a linear approach. Because one of the other things that the Preamble is saying is we're not trying to create a new theory or a new model of the soul, but rather develop pathways whereby you shouldn't take anything we are describing as true until such time as you have played with that, experimented for yourself, and found that you could actually validate it inside out. So what that means is, again, that I write with the help of what I know and what we know and the kind of 4 decades research and exploration that I've been in. And at the same time, I am at some time be for hours or days with one paragraph or one idea for it to surrender, because the writing is not, I'm not sitting in some university lab reporting about an experiment that we've just done with mice about the brain, but rather I am inside the inquiry, inside out, describing and reporting the meditative, contemplative inquiry process, and inviting anybody to embark on a similar journey in yourself. And right now my sense is that chapter 3 will likely lead into chapter 4 about the mind, because there's all sorts of concepts in the world about the mind and the brain, and we're going to try and reframe some of those and offer some new pathways of discovering how to consider and contemplate these very big ideas and their relationship with the soul. And you do realize we're doing an announcement about a new body of work, and I'm kind of breaking all the rules of branding and marketing 101, because we're not branding and not marketing anything. And what I am suggesting by modeling and describing the process I'm in is one where rather than follow a chronological or a linear or a problem and solution type modality, there is an invitation to the recognition that we are courting the soul, courting the intelligence that the soul brings. And it has a bit of that nature that I sometimes describe as building the bridge to the bridge in order to be able to build the bridge, or building the scaffolds to build the scaffolds to build the structure that we need to build. Inspired very much by the story, the old documentary of how they developed the Golden Gate Bridge, where they needed to build the bridge to build the bridge. And in this sense, what I'm describing has about it the awareness of building and cultivating an ecology where where we may be conductive for intelligence, conductive for the soul and the realms the soul can and is communicating with and is in communion with, to impart knowledge and revelation. So that is the invitation into this, and the chapter into the mind will likely describe 2 main processes. One where the mind is contained and governed by the brain, and the other is the other way around, when it turns upside down and the brain is released to acquiesce and support and facilitate the mind rather than thinks that it needs to run the show. And part of the suggestion in that is going to be that really there are many, many things that we need to turn upside down in this world. That is, if we're going to release and liberate ourselves from the intractable problems we've created, because so much of what we've created in the world, there is the beauty and the glory of all that we've created, but there are also the convergence of many crisis points that we describe in the idea of the meta-crisis. And they were generated primarily by focusing so much on what we know. So the suggestion is we're not likely to solve the problems we have created in following here the Einstein brief by looking at the problems through the lens with which we created the problem. So where do we look other than through the lens of the problem? Well, the suggestion is that there is a reversal, there is a turning upside down or a flying upside down approach whereby we give ourselves permission to inquire with and through the unconscious and engage those connective realms that are advertised or invited in the idea of the Universalis project in one way, evolving together in another way, where we describe how when people come together and we surrender the egoic need to speak about what I know and I have confidence and convince somebody else in my theory to more of a symphonic discovery, a bit like playing music together, such that we discover what we release and liberate in each other. So I'd offer that, Peter, as a bit of an answer to how is the Universalis project current openings, which had the idea of being at the point of a current of discovery that's finding us, and what I'm describing in a way is similar to that. I am also making the suggestion that by describing that will put us in a position to then also narrate a story of the soul reconnecting to its greater potential and liberating itself. And I'm also implicitly in that making the invitation that some of the challenges we find on the global theater of the world today will ultimately find their solution and salvation by more people, including people in leadership position, surrendering and giving way to a different kind of process that's not based in the self-importance of the leader or the celebrity or the all-knowing one person, but rather surrendering to a process of discovery, which has a bit of the idea that you alluded to, Peter, in the post-guru world. So a bit of a long-winding answer, but more than anything, a flavor to taste the nature of the process, and that this is not going to be a short new boxes that you can fill to all boxes of a new theory, but rather an invitation for your own discovery in your search and inquiry dialogue with the soul.
That's excellent. Thank you.
You know, there are so many threads in what you just said that you could follow. They're all interesting. One that caught me early on was leading from the unconscious and the fact that things aren't happening as quickly, or they're not following sort of a predetermined schedule of, we'll have chapter 2, then automatically chapter 3 will appear, and it goes like that. Because you mentioned the current openings, And there's a lot of great work that you did with David Price Francis on the unconscious, how it works and how we can work with our unconscious as we're trying to learn new knowledge and open up new territories. And one of the main points that I remember from that is it can take time. It can take a lot of time, but it takes that sort of repeated, dedicated effort. Eventually, it opens up and you will get more than you ever imagined in what you're searching for. So the fact that it's not following an exact predetermined schedule it's kind of reassuring, because that's how I understood the subconscious to work anyway. And the other thing about that I find attractive is that this whole process of emergence and working with the unconscious, it's not like something emerges once and then you fix it in a form, you set it aside, and then you move on to something else. And that's why we have libraries that's full of wonderful knowledge. But with this, when we talk about emergence and the fact that we hope that other people will join and start talking about this and working into it with us, it's an emergence that the process of emerging doesn't stop. And if we get back to understanding how the unconscious works, it takes a certain potency and a certain strength of effort. So I'm just saying that I think the more people who are actually engaged in the process of trying to discover and trying to lead by the unconscious, the more we're going to discover. And that's why I think there's so much potential, especially as more people join into it, because we don't know exactly where it's going to lead, which is fantastic. That's the whole point of working into the unconscious and seeing what's emerging. And it just sort of reminded me, this has been the sort of the one of the main thrusts of the Portal's website from the beginning is we're exploring what is emerging on the edges of people's awareness. And this is one of them. And this sort of, again, underscores what Portals is all about.
You're just knowingly or unknowingly plugging into the very thing I'm working on right now. So, and I don't want to talk about it too much because it's still in a forming phase, but I will say that there is a whole conversation we ought to come back to in the future to do around emergence. It's a word that traditional scientists hate. The reason they hate it is because science has been in the business of trying to define something to its parts. And that means they find one space in the brain to do one thing, or one molecule to do one thing, and they're able to name it. And so science was resistant for many, many years to the word emergence, partly on terms of, well, when you say emergence, you really say you don't know what's going on. So you're using the word emergence as a fill-in words to describe we haven't a clue what is going on, so we say it's emerging. When we really figure out, we would be able to describe what is emerging and how it is emerging. So there is, but see, that's the toggle and the struggle between the conscious and the unconscious. Now, then there is the usage of the word emergence in the way it is viewed in complexity science, complex system science, where part of the current leading edge theory describes that consciousness itself is a bottom-up emergence when the system has complexified itself sufficiently. It's a theory that says molecules got to play and dance together, and when the molecules that play together became complex enough, they gave birth to life. I know I'm oversimplifying. And then life developed and evolved, and when life became complex enough, it gave rise to consciousness. So that's the bottom-up theory of the emergence of life, where the term, the word emergence, is used to describe a system reaching a threshold point of complexification where it gives rise to a next new dimension. By the way, nothing wrong with this contemplative theory. We are going to skate in a way that integrates it and go beyond that to describe an emergence in which there is a dialogue that involves a rising teleology. Because there is going to be a conundrum that we will have to face. And I don't know if, by the way, all I'm saying now will make its way into the writing or not, but that's me being exposing where I am with the project. We will have to contemplate deeply, not just in our heads, but with our souls about the human journey and the human experience, and whether the miracle that we experience as life and the miracle that we experience as conscious human life, whether we are prepared to surrender that miraculous development and evolution to the random exercise of complex system, or whether we feel that there is more to it. And if we do, what could we bring to bear to substantiate it? So all that is part of the inquiry, and what I'm saying openly in the preamble is that what we will not do, we will not be doing a comparative study of the soul to compare different frameworks and different ways where the word is being used. So in a way, I just demonstrated what I said we won't do with the word emergence by placing it in context and hinting to way different, in different context the word will be used. And I may need to do this in the writing as well. Yes or no, I'm about to figure that out. The last thing from what you said, Patrick, is in it, there is going to, you spoke about that things take time. So we're going to have to talk about these two different elevations of process where there is a part of us that is able to be tremendously fast and economic. And that is indeed part of the survival wiring in the system. So the brain's capacity to develop heuristic and shortcuts is an evolutionary capacity to help us figure out whether it's a tiger in the woods or something else, and then make a response. What you are alluding to in response to me describing the unconscious is that there is a whole other process, which is a meandering inquiry quest where we don't follow the most economic, shortest, fastest path, because it's not about creating another packaged food and shipping it to the market. It's actually about unlocking the creative and the connective human capacity. And that is not process that's going to be ruled by the need of the brain to be economic and save energy. So I'll pause there.
I want to say how exciting this prospect is, and how important it is to emphasize on the value of shedding light into these territories of the soul, without having to go to Tibet or to India and meet a yogi or do 30 years of psychoanalysis to solve an issue. I think the element of all of us co-creating this content and discovering it in a playful way and with a lot of practices that are accessible, I think it's so important, especially in these times, because it has come that we live a soulless life, and people are suffering from this. And it can find application in many fields, let's say in education, for teachers how to help the children gather their soul, to work environments, to health, where often medicine and doctors ignore the soul of the person, to science, to everything, really, anything. And it's so important that we gather and we tune to the domain of the soul and the unconscious, and discover these other voices and tune with these other voices in us. So I'm looking forward to working with others, to opening this content, and to whatever more wants to be revealed.
Okay, friends, thank you for this run. I discovered halfway through the conversation that the sun is appearing through the blinds here strangely on my face. We'll see how that comes on the video, but this is our introduction to the Portals into the Soul project. We just wanted to give you a bit of a taste, and stay tuned. Come join us. Let us know if you're interested to plug in together with others, and we'll connect you with others so you can cultivate your own portals into the soul pod. Thank you. Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.